Today is the perfect day for the topic of perfectionism, because today is not perfect at all. I slept for, I don't know, like 2 or 3 hours because there were a lot of mosquitoes in my room. I wanted to have the perfect outdoorsy sunny day to film this video in this beautiful garden. And the humidity is about 95% because it's going to rain any minute and my hair looks like crazy. So today I want to talk about perfectionism because it's been a reoccurring theme in my life and it is the main topic in my therapy right now.
Therapy.
Oh my god, therapy works!
And I thought I am a self-proclaimed expert on it now, so why not share my findings with you? As I explained in this video, I have tried to do the perfect content for my new business idea that I had and how I almost burned out on Instagram trying to do this. And now there is a time when I feel like I really have to get rid of this. So what if I told you that perfectionism doesn't make you more productive or more successful, but it makes you stuck? In this video, I'll tell you about what perfectionism is, what the science finds about it, and also I want to share a couple of tips and tricks that I find very helpful in trying to relieve myself from perfectionism. So make sure to stay until the end, because then you'll get 2 very practical things that you can do today in order to get rid of your perfectionism, at least a little bit. I'm Suzanne. I'm a mentor for those who never really felt like they belonged or who never really felt seen. On this channel, I talk about psychology, creativity, and how to lead a fulfilling life without constant comparison or pressure from the outside. So what is perfectionism? Thomas Curran wrote this beautiful book that I haven't finished before shooting this video, but well, nothing is perfect, right? He talks about the false belief that by being perfect and flawless, you will be accepted and nothing will ever go wrong. There are 2 different views on perfectionism. There is the destructive perfectionism, which means that everything you want to do has to be perfect in order to feel good. And then there is just the healthy striving. That means that you are very motivated and for a while you are more productive because of that. The 2 psychologists, Paul Hewitt and Gordon Flatt, describe 3 different kinds of perfectionism. So there is the socially prescribed perfectionism, which means that you feel like you have to be perfect because the outside world tells you so. Then there is the other-oriented perfectionism, which means that you think others have to be perfect and that you expect that from them. And then there is the self-prescribed or self-oriented perfectionism, which means that you have very high standards that are nearly impossible to fulfill for yourself. So in the short term, this can increase engagement and, as I said, motivation, but in the long run, it can lead to burnout, anxiety, depression, and so on. So being a perfectionist means being ambitious, right? That's at least what I thought for a very long time, but then I find again and again that this is not true at all, and actually being a perfectionist, I can say from the bottom of my heart that I feel trapped by it every single day. So where does perfectionism come from, you might ask? Well, it depends on what kind of perfectionism we're looking at, and also it depends what kind of person you are and what the environment was where you grew up in. So for example, I grew up in a household where there were a lot of rules, but they were not openly communicated. So for no logical reason, I was often criticized and I didn't understand the reason why. This led to me believing, okay, I have to do everything perfect all the time because mood swings and other things could change these rules as well. So I never knew when I had to expect verbal punishment and any misunderstandings. And this actually stuck until today. It always sticks until you work with these things. This is an example for self-oriented perfectionism in my case. One of my fellow creators, Maggie McCormack, she is a very amazing woman and you have to check her out. She says in one of her videos that she wanted to be famous and she thought, okay, once I'm famous, I am worthy and I'm accepted by the other people. But after a while, she realized that this longing for being famous resulted in a lack of self-acceptance and that she was actually in a spiral of proving herself to be accepted and worthy. Thomas Curran writes that in the Western world, the self-oriented perfectionism and also the other-oriented perfectionism is on a constant rise and it has increased for a while now. But the socially prescribed perfectionism is actually increasing exponentially at the moment, and it has done so since the early 2000s. And the reason for that is consumerism. It is also comparison in the very capitalist-driven world, and also social media. So what is the psychology behind perfectionism? There are many different reasons. The first reason is comparison thinking and the brain. Our brain is on the constant lookout for a system that it can rank yourself in and also others, because that makes it feel safe and also, kind of sorted. In my last video, I already talked about a study that was done by the Royal Society for Public Health. They looked at 1,500 people and they looked at their behavior concerning 5 of the major social media platforms back then in 2017. And they found that Instagram was the most harmful, and that is because it triggers socially prescribed perfectionism. Why is that? Because we have to compare ourselves with the whole world. In the past, we only had colleagues at work, we had classmates at school that we compared ourselves with. Maybe we had some magazines and some famous people, but we also knew these people are famous, they have to look good for movies, whatever. Nowadays, we can and do compare ourselves with the whole world. And there is always someone who is better at something, so we lose. Brené Brown writes in her book, The Gift of Imperfection, that people are not striving to be perfect or to create the perfect life, but actually what they seek truly is meaning. And this is not what perfection will bring you or will give you and enable for you. So the root thought behind is that if I look perfect, if I have the perfect job, if I have the perfect relationships, etc., then nothing can hurt me and I will be accepted and everything will be fine. But that's not the case at all. So perfectionism is also a coping mechanism for fear and shame. Brené Brown writes that perfectionism actually acts as a shield, and it tries to shield us from not being accepted, from fear, from shame. And it's the false thought that we have that if we look perfect, if we do everything perfectly, and if our lives look like the perfect life, that is actually right now present in the minds of our society. It has a really specific way to look, this perfect life, that then we can avoid not being accepted and any negative consequences of whatever. In his book Pathways to Bliss, Joseph Campbell writes in 2004 that people are actually looking for meaning in life and not for the perfect life. But they think that a perfect way of living might lead also to a meaningful life, but it actually does the opposite, because it is not what motivates you truly from the within, but you are motivated by the outside because you think, oh, this is what a perfect life looks like. Okay, this person looks really happy all the time on social media, so I might just copy what they do. I might work hard, have money, have a house, have a family, have children, have a dog.
The American dream.
Which is very cliche, I know. This will not lead to happiness and meaning, because meaning means something else for everyone. Perfectionism is also a way to gain and keep control in your life. The thought is that if I can control everything, nothing bad can happen to me. Joachim Stöber and Catherine Otto also did a lot of research on perfectionism, and they found that there is perfectionistic concern and perfectionistic striving. Perfectionistic striving is actually very positive, or it can be positive, because it means that you are just for a moment moving into a direction where you try to do the perfect thing and where you are very motivated to do so. The perfectionistic concern, on the other hand, means that you fear mistakes and you fear self-criticism, and that can lead to stress, burnout, anxiety, and other negative psychological things. Also, in later studies, in 2004, for example, a study was done by Handley et al., and he found that the concern over mistakes lead to pathological worrying, which leads to also depression, anxiety, and obsessive-compulsive symptoms. So there's this negative cycle with perfectionism. You are anxious because of something, and you try to have control over your life, which leads to perfectionistic behavior. And this might be of short relief for you, but that leads to constant stress and worry because you have to keep up this perfectionistic behavior and standards, which again leads to anxiety, and then you are in the cycle repeating yourself again and again. So there is this paradox about perfectionism. You might think perfectionism leads to safety, but actually it leads to a lot of vulnerability. Instead of protecting us from failure, it actually causes a fear from failure. Instead of boosting connection, it's boosting isolation, because you want to hide your flaws and then maybe in the end hide your entire self. And instead of driving performance, it actually lets you perform less because you don't even start. So there are a lot of real-life consequences that perfectionism has. In 1995, Flett and Hewitt did a research on expert sports people, and they found that perfectionistic sports people had a lot of problems with coming back into their performance after having failed. And in the long term, that led to very low performance in comparison to others who could deal with failure better than them. In the Harvard Business Review from 2018, it says that perfectionistic people actually sacrifice sleep, balance, and overall health because they try to strive all the time and do everything in a perfect way. So for me, I feel this a lot. I've been trying to write a book since 2012, and it is finished, but it's not really finished because I'm not happy with the editing and with the outcome, and it needs to be perfect. So I'm really working on finishing it and being able to publish it at some point. And there is this huge spiral going on. So you have very high standards. You do not want to fail. If you do so, you feel ashamed. And by feeling ashamed, you set your standards even higher in order to avoid this shame. And then you overwork and you overstimulate, and then it all starts from the beginning. Thomas Curran writes in his book that you set yourself too high goals, which means it's not achievable, and if you fail, you're very disappointed. Set yourself good enough goals, maybe 80% goals, and when you achieve them, you will be very elevated, because I can tell you, when you achieve goals as a perfectionist that you set yourself, no matter how small the goal is, it is very, very nice. And you realize, okay, it didn't have to be the whole thing. You didn't have to write the whole book. Because if you only set yourself unattainable goals, that will lead to chronic disappointment. You also have to reframe failure. Failure is not a weakness. It doesn't show that you are not good enough. It just shows that you had the courage to try and that you actually gained a lot of experience in the meantime. The next thing is acceptance, and a Japanese philosophy called wabi-sabi, which means the beauty lies in imperfection. They also have something called kintsugi, which is where they repair cracked pottery, for example, and they do it with gold or with something that looks golden, and they actually celebrate these flaws because it makes a whole new artwork. So you can try in your day-to-day life to be happy with your flaws. If there's like a tiny typo in your email, it doesn't matter. It can be fun. If there's a scratch in the guitar, who cares? It tells a story. The next point is self-compassion. Science has shown again and again that self-compassion leads to more gratitude, more happiness. It reduces anxiety and depression. So for example, try to talk to yourself like you talk to a friend. Maybe you've heard this before, but when you actually try to observe your thoughts, you realize very quickly that you would not talk to a friend like you talk to yourself. Just do this for a while and make it a habit of trying to be more nice, just in your thoughts with yourself. Remember, you are a human and not one single person on this planet is perfect. Focus more on the process and not so much on the outcome. Ask yourself, okay, this is a process right now. What can I learn from this? Perfectionists over-focus on outcome, which leads to paralysis. But the value lies in the process, and we have to acknowledge that. And also, you can work with yourself through behavioral psychology. You can try and consistently try to cope with small imperfections. For example, upload a picture on Instagram without a filter, where you do not look perfect. Or publish a project which is only 80% done. For example, like me now, I am filming this video, although I am not very happy with the settings. And I wish it was different, but this is how it is, and this is my kind of practice. The goal is to experience that nothing terrible will happen if the things are not done perfectly. And one of the most important things is, do set boundaries to comparison. Go to Instagram and check out the profiles you're following. Are they actually fueling your comparison thinking? Are these people projecting only perfect lives that you can never achieve? Or is it actually a feed that's very positive and that actually encourages you to go out and do things and work on your goals and have a nice and fulfilled life? Unfollow the people that are not good for your mental health. And also schedule digital breaks. Do not spend all the time on social media and also on your phone. Be in the real world and you will see that imperfection is everywhere. Try to value meaning more than perfection. Instead of asking, how do I look? Do I look good? Ask yourself, does this actually create meaning? Why do I look this way? Of course, you can try and work on all of these things on your own, but I can relate that sometimes it's very hard to see your own blind spots. So if you ever want help and feel like you need support with doing so, I am actually offering mentorings where we can work exactly on these topics. So now I have 2 practical tips that you can implement right now and you can start today to work with your perfectionism. Number 1 tip is do not set yourself smart goals, but do set yourself realistic goals that also offer you some space to breathe. I know smart goals can be interesting when you, for example, have to write your bachelor thesis at university, or when you have a project that has a due date and you need to accomplish that in a specific amount of time. But for day-to-day life, for example, your sports goals, unless you are a bodybuilder or someone who participates in a competition or something, that's different then as well. But for day-to-day goals, do not set yourself smart goals. Open goals create less pressure and you will have more motivation doing them. And believe me when I say I am totally guilty. I tried to set myself smart goals so many countless times, because then I'm very motivated and I think, okay, now I'm gonna change my life completely, entirely. But after 1 or 2 days with these very, very close-minded goals, I fell off the wagon. So perfectionism is not a badge of honor. It is actually a trap. It doesn't make you stronger, it makes you anxious, it makes you restless, and it makes you exhausted. The way forward isn't about being flawless, it's about embracing your own way, your own path in life, your own creativity, and your gut feeling. Do not live only by constant pressure and constant comparison. This is not what will create a meaningful life for you. It will make you sad and unfulfilled in the long run. These goals are not your own goals. You have to create them by yourself. So subscribe if you want more depth and psychology-related content and if you want to focus on living without pressure. And I'd love to hear from you now. What exactly does perfectionism to your life? Do you feel it in everyday life? Please comment. I am so curious about how you guys deal with it, and also if you have any tips about how to cope with perfectionism, or not cope, but how to work with it, please also let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to go a little deeper, I've created a checklist where you can find out if you are suffering from perfectionism, in case you do not feel it very, very consciously. You can go to my website, the link is in the description below, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.